I'm here today on Before College TV live with Jeffrey Moss. Jeffrey is the CEO and founder of Parker Dewey. And if you don't know Parker Dewey, you can check it out. They offer micro internships. Actually, I'd say you facilitate the connection between, why don't you fill in the blank?
Yeah, so we facilitate micro internships between companies, and we use the term career launchers. So career launchers meaning college students, graduate students, and recent college grads. So folks who are really starting off their professional careers.
So it's really a remarkable way of helping students to get a taste, a flavor of what it's like to work with a large organization or a smaller organization. Mm-hmm. So when preparing for this, Jeffrey, and I did prepare for this, I want you to know, I did.
And so did I. I dressed up for you.
Well, a little background. So, Jeffrey is not only someone who helps students and employers and colleges and universities. He's also helped me tremendously. You've been someone in my corner, and truly, I'm so grateful that you have helped me in so many ways to connect with people who have really provided great insight. So, like, you're such a great connector. Like, you're a very nice. You're a kind person, so thank you.
That means a ton. And by the way, the feeling is mutual. It's nice when again, old friends happen to be able to support each other professionally as well as personally. So thank you.
Yeah, well, you know what? I feel like you've done much more, but I'm happy to be gracious. But the other thing is we're a fraternity. I guess we're still fraternity brothers, but back at Indiana University, we were in the same house together. We're still fraternity brothers. And it's nice to be able to have that connection. So I was older than you. I think you're older than me now.
That could be.
I think
that's a Bob Dylan lyric. I was so much older then. I'm younger than that now.
No, but I think that we're always, let me just ask you, because we're going to get into what you do professionally, but in terms of Greek life and in terms of going to Indiana University, because you went to Indiana University and then from IU, you then went to where? I know where, but it's nice for you.
Yeah, I went to work. I went to work for about 6 years, and I went to grad school at Penn.
So you went to Penn. What grad school at Penn?
I was at Wharton. So I did my MBA at Wharton, and then went back into the venture capital world.
So now, when you go to Wharton, Wharton is really highly respected. People get excited when they hear Wharton, don't they?
I think it depends. I think there's a lot of questions around what academic pedigree really means, because I can tell you what I learned from my 4 years at IU are incredible, and I don't know if I would have learned them anywhere else. The foundation, the empathy, the humility, and certainly I think undergrads at Wharton learn that as well. But I think we're continuing to recognize that, again, academic pedigree doesn't necessarily predict or align to long-term career success. It really is what you do with that degree. And not just what you do upon graduation, but even during your 4-ish years in college. What types of experiences are you having? Are you taking the time to understand those crosswalks from the classroom to the real world? And again, look, I was a business student. I was taking classes that sounded like job titles: accounting, finance, marketing. It's especially important for those students who are taking classes like philosophy and English and history. How do you understand those crosswalks?
Right. And that undergraduate degree, did that help you? And it sounds like it did, but how important was that in your long-term trajectory?
Oh, I'd say it was vital. It was vital, and not in the ways that you would necessarily think. Not because I learned the accounting skills or how to do a discounted cash flow, but I think it's much more around the core skills, the problem solving, the communication, the empathy, the adaptability. Those are the skills that have continued to stay with me throughout my entire career, and I find I use daily.
Yeah. And it's also interesting, in addition to being someone who obviously succeeded in the classroom, you also were a little 500 competitor, correct?
I was. Good memory, Harlan.
Well, you know what? That's really impressive. For people who aren't familiar with the Little 500 or the Little Five, you can watch Breaking Away, which is now like an old, man, it's an old movie, but it's a classic. But the Little Five team was an intense group. And you were part of the Little Five team for how many years?
3 years.
So you started that, and were you a biker before you started to, to ride in Little Five?
No, not at all. It was something I sort of picked up my sophomore year of college because I realized I was just out of shape. I played sports in high school and then went to college and certainly put on my freshman 15 and just was really into it. But yeah, it was serious.
Yeah,
it was a great time. I still ride.
You still ride. So, I mean, that is something that carried over. And for people who aren't familiar with what that is, and I know we're just kind of going off the rails a little bit, but I think that thing is so interesting because, I mean, it's the ultimate race where you're around an oval, going incredibly fast. Like, can you just tell me about that and the meaning and how that impacted you? Because I've never really asked you, and I'd love to learn more.
No, and I haven't, I'm not sure I ever really thought about it. Cycling and Little Five in particular is interesting because it really is a team sport. I mean, people think of cycling being individual. You're on a bike by yourself, but Little Five is actually a team of 4 riders who are working together to complete a 50-mile race. And you take turns on the bike and you do exchanges and you're going at incredibly fast speeds and there's a lot of strategy behind it. And it's interesting because so many of those things, and again, I hadn't thought about it until you just asked the question, so many of those things translate to business, where it still does require that individual performance, but that individual performance as part of a team. It also requires a ton of self-discipline. I mean, it's funny, now that I'm not racing anymore, if the weather's not gorgeous, I don't go on my bike. Back when I was competing, again, we were going out in the snow and the rain and all of these different things because we had to. And we had to have that self-discipline both for ourselves and for the team. You didn't want to let down your teammates.
Yeah. And you were always riding, you're always wearing, your biking gear.
Shaving my legs. I
didn't see that part, but no one, I didn't know that was happening. Maybe because we had group showers in the house. So you probably, anyway, but
on that note,
nobody needs to hear.
Harlan Cohen, the author of The Naked Roommate.
No one needs to hear that. But that piece of the discipline, the teamwork, the competition, what's the highest you guys finished in terms of, in your tenure as a Little Fiver?
I'm sad to say I don't remember. It was not pretty.
Right. But it wasn't even about that. It was about the training and the teamwork and that whole process. And it's
my claim to fame is I was on ESPN for about 6 seconds. Because they used to broadcast on ESPN, and there was one part at the beginning of the race my junior year where I had led the race for, I think, about 6 seconds. And it was on ESPN. You couldn't see me. The shot was way back.
Right.
But that is my one claim to fame. I think I still have it on VHS somewhere, if you know anyone who has a VHS player.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I love that you do a lot of really interesting things. And I'm always trying to connect students who have dreams with other professionals, people who are living those dreams, who are accessible and really want students to be successful. And I think that, the trajectory and the path and you finding something at Indiana between the fraternity, between Little Five, between being in the Kelley School of Business, correct? You're a Kelley grad. And I know you're still really involved with the Kelley School. You're currently serving on the Alumni Board, right? In the School of Business. Right. So you're still involved. So those of you who do a search for Jeffrey Moss and somehow come across this, you can gain even more insight into his experience. And sometimes I'd love to.
And my leg shaving.
And the legs. We could always if you want to take out the leg shaving, although, that's what gave you that lead for 6 seconds.
That was it.
I think it was
aerodynamic.
It was those legs. That was your claim to fame. So I want to explore Parker Dewey. I think that what you do in introducing students to micro-internships, really being an innovator when it comes to this concept. Now, there's a wonderful video on Parker Dewey in the About section where you share, and I hate to have someone repeat something that someone can get somewhere else, but if you can just help us to understand why you started this and the value, I'd really appreciate it.
Sure. So again, I never expected to start a company. I was perfectly content in my career as an investor. But one of the things I was doing a lot of investing in both technology and education. And one of the things I was seeing was that students are graduating from college, and if they didn't have the quote unquote right academic pedigree, if they weren't graduating with a high GPA from a school like in Indiana, with the right major, it was really hard to land a job, especially so for those from underrepresented populations. And I just gotten to know so many of these students who were smart, hardworking, had all of these skills we were looking for. And it seemed like something was broken. And what was interesting is even for those students with the high GPAs and the majors that sound like job titles, it's also difficult because there's so few opportunities for career exploration. How am I, as a student, supposed to know if I want to work at a big company or a small company, or in finance or accounting, or I think I like marketing, but do I like analytics versus writing? There's just so few opportunities for career exploration. And on the other side, for companies, it's really difficult to decide who do we want to recruit and interview and ultimately hire because there's so few data points. So with that, we created this concept of the micro-internship. We recognize that every professional, doesn't matter what industry you're in, doesn't matter what company you're at or your role, we all have these projects that are on our plate that just ain't the highest and best use of time for us. But for a college student, they'd be really interesting. And they can provide insights into a role, into an industry, into a company that they may not otherwise have access to. Plus, it also provides them with these pathways. So it becomes almost like a mutual test drive. So I, as a busy professional, can offload some of this work to a highly motivated college student, but also maybe meet someone who could be a great fit for my company down the road as an employee.
And then I know when it comes to the employer-employee relationship, one of the benefits for the employer is this is someone who's doing pretty much work for hire, contracted work, correct?
Well, it's actually even easier. We're actually set up as a consulting firm. So when a company works with a Parker Dewey micro intern, they're actually retaining Parker Dewey as a consultant, and the student, if you will, is on our books. The student is an employer contractor Parker Dewey, which makes it even easier. Which means that you, Harlan, can work with one of the students. You can put it on your corporate card and you're not doing 1099s or W-2s. And even better, if you realize the student is someone who you do want to hire, there's no conversion fee, there's no temp to perm, back to the fact that we're a mission-oriented organization.
Right. So when somebody has a project, when there's something that isn't a full-time job, this is a great solution for companies to do that. So I don't know if you get into the details of the numbers of how many partners you have and how many students you've had participate. Do you have any data or numbers to just kind of help us to get a handle on the scope?
Yeah, I mean, there's some that we can share. To your point, we don't share a lot. We have partnerships with over, I think, 400 colleges and universities across the U.S. right now. We've worked with tens of thousands of college students, hundreds of companies ranging from one-person startups to Fortune 100 and everything in between, every industry, every department, you name it. And one of the things that's actually probably most important right now, for those folks watching live, I mean, obviously during the COVID pandemic, I was just looking at the numbers for May. The number of projects being offered in May and kicked off is over 50% greater than it was in April. And wow. April was a record month. And what that means is that companies are still providing these micro internships, and not just still providing them, they're providing more than ever because they realize that maybe they cut their internship program and realize they shouldn't have. Or maybe they're busier than they've been because of COVID. In a lot of cases, we're seeing companies say, ooh, we think we're not going to be on campus this fall to recruit. Whether or not campuses are open, we don't think we're going to be there. How can we start to build relationships with students from the class of 2021 who we may want to bring in? So they're offering these micro internships. So we've seen more opportunities for students than ever before. And it's pretty incredible during this pandemic.
Yeah, that's awesome. In terms of students who are looking for an internship, they're looking for a gig, and they want to apply, will you just walk us through what that process is? And I also want to get a strong handle on the likelihood that someone's going to actually get an internship.
Sure. The process is pretty simple for the student. They create an account on Parker Dewey. It takes them about 5 minutes. and to let the students in on a little secret, we could auto-populate it with your resume or your LinkedIn. We give you the opportunity to upload those things, but we still ask the student to fill those things out. Because one of the things we found is if a student's not willing to spend the 5 or 10 minutes writing in where they go to school or their major, or it's riddled with typos, that sends a signal to the company. So again, we're trying to really level the playing field, and that's one of the ways we do it. So a student creates a profile, takes 5 minutes, there's no cost or commitments or anything. The students then see the micro internships that are available. So what company is offering it, the description of the project, when it's due, how much they'll be paid if they're selected for it, and they apply to only those that interest them. So companies aren't contacting them. We're not selling any student data or allowing companies to mine the database. Student has complete control. Once they're selected for a micro internship, they then engage with the company as much or as little as they and the company want. That's it. Really, really, really simple. And then we're there along the way to make sure everything goes perfectly. Historically, what we've said is any student who puts forth a bona fide effort will get selected for micro internships. And that's held true. Now, there's some wiggle room in the term bona fide effort. So the student who doesn't complete a profile or answers the question, why should I pick you with, I have some free time, they're not going to get picked. And there's nothing we can do about that other than to provide that feedback to them. But students that put forth a real effort do get picked. May not be every project, but they will get picked.
Right. So for someone who's looking for something to do over the summer, if they make an effort and they put themselves out there and they're diligent, then there's a strong likelihood that they will be placed on something.
Well, one of the things that's been really interesting, there was a great article about this taking place down at Duke, but we've seen a bunch of students doing it as well, is students are actually reaching out to employers. They're reaching out to an employer and saying, my summer internship was canceled and I'm really, really interested in working for your company. I know your intern class may be full, but do you have any discrete projects I can do on your behalf? Do you have any micro internships you can offer me? And what we're finding is the students are actually having a ton of success with it. They're actually creating their own micro internships, and you put yourself in the shoes of an employer. Again, you have these projects on your plate anyway. And for a student to come to you and offer the help and make your life easier, who's going to say no? Plus, the student, through that type of process, is really demonstrating those skills that we as employers most value anyway. Again, the grit, the communication, the aggressiveness, and analytical thinking.
I think there's something really powerful, not only for your college students, but for those high school students who were going to be going to camp or had a job set up that was dependent on some type of group gathering. The idea that you can actually think about something you want, reach out to someone who's doing it, a business that you like or enjoy or a brand, and then offering to do projects. And the thing that I think it's really cool is it's nice to get paid, but if someone can't even pay because for whatever reason they're not in that situation, the idea of saying, can I do a micro internship for you 2 or 3 days a week and you don't even have to pay me?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about that.
Yeah. For the high school students?
I have mixed feelings about it overall. I'm not a believer in unpaid internships or free work. I think what it winds up doing is continuing to sort of have this gap between the haves and the have-nots. Right. Am I someone that can afford to work for free or not? Am I going to have more opportunities because I can afford to work for free? I think it's a different conversation and one that's, again, it's a much bigger conversation. But to your point, look, if I as a high school student can reach out, maybe it's to a nonprofit and offer to do that kind of work, or a very mission-oriented, of course, I think it's great. And by the way, you may also find, even as a high school student, you can reach out to one of these companies and say, I'd love to do some work for you. And if the company's not willing to pay you, again, that's an interesting signal. It's not that we're asking a company to pay 10 grand or 20 grand. As a professional, being able to pay a student 100 or 200 bucks for real work that they're doing, it's not, for most professionals, it's not an insurmountable amount, but it means so much to the high school or college student.
Right.
It's also a signal. Again, think about the signal it sends that, again, I'm willing to pay you for your work. Think about sort of the self-motivation it provides in that student.
Yeah. I think that that's incredibly powerful to be paid for something. And just to even provide context to the volunteering for a day, the example that I'll use when talking to students is, work 5 days a week somewhere else. And then if you have an extra day or two where it's something where you need to make that money, because I think equity issues a huge piece. If it's something that you so badly want to do, if you can just put yourself in places where you're around people, because when I look at Parker Dewey, I look through the experience in this lens of people, places, and patience. It's always, where can I find people in places doing things I love to do so that I can, over time, build relationships and have meaningful experiences that are going to inform me so that I can decide what I want to do and who to align with. And I think that what you do is create a really easy, accessible way for students to find people and to find places.
Yes.
When it comes to the types of I want to know some of the types of businesses, especially I always like to go to the extremes, but what's just a kick-ass, really cool gig that came up and you're like, whoa, man, I wish I could do this, but I got to run this place.
Yeah, no, there was one yesterday, a very large fitness company. Again, we don't disclose any of the company names unless the companies have disclosed them in places, but this was a very large fitness company that needs help creating a social media strategy. Again, you think about gyms during the COVID environment. How do these organizations engage prospective members or current members, and how do they engage on social media? And they want a college student to come up with a social media strategy. I mean, think about how cool that would be as a college student. And this company is looking for the innovation, and they recognize that college students are just much closer to that world than they are. So that project was posted yesterday, and it is just so cool. And literally my comment to the person who posted it, the chief marketing officer of this organization, was, I wish I could do it myself. Super, super cool. There was another one with again, earlier this week, it was an international gaming company. So they do video games. They're primarily in Europe now. They're looking to come to the US. They want college students to help with two things. One is developing a US market entrance strategy, and the other is creating some content that they can share tied to that entrance strategy. So again, for someone interested in marketing, super cool. For someone that likes video games, super cool. For someone that's interested in international business, super cool. Really, really cool things.
So if I'm listening to this and I'm a student thinking these are amazing opportunities, it sounds like I'm not qualified to do these things because these sound, really intense. What are the qualifications for someone to potentially get one of these internships?
Yeah, I would tell you just about every project, just about every micro-internship on the platform, any college student could do. Most of them require those skills that we learned irrespective of major. Research, communication, crafting an argument, writing, and all of these skills we learn, again, irrespective of major. Only a small percentage of them do you need a more technical skill, whether it's technical meaning computer programming or technical meaning knowing accounting rules or how to do a discounted cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is I think we do a really good job helping the companies scope the projects in a way and appreciate and understand the fact that these are college students. The work is not going to be the same as what you're going to get from someone with 20 or 30 years of professional experience, and the companies get that. And not only do they get it, I think they appreciate it. I think they appreciate that they're getting a different perspective, and the perspective that is really only available from someone who's, again, at this early stage in one's career.
Then when it comes to getting paid to do something so amazing, I mean, these sound like awesome opportunities. Can you give us a range of what students would get paid?
Yeah, I think the average, I was just looking at the numbers so I can give you real numbers. I think the average is about $350.
Mm-hmm.
So every project is fixed fee. The student sees how much they're going to get paid before they apply. Tends to shake out, but even though it's fixed fee, we ask companies to estimate about how long it's going to take. Tends to shake out about $20 an hour. Mm-hmm. If I was looking at a mean. But again, everything's fixed fee, so it might be a $400 project that's expected to take 20 hours. It might take you as a student 22 hours. It might take you 18 hours. You're still going to get that same amount. The range is typically about $200 to $600. But again, we've seen stuff north of 1,000 or 2,000. We've seen things that are $100.
Can you do more than one? Like if I'm super ambitious and I want to let this be my summer gig.
Oh yeah, we actually think more than one is the best. I mean, we had Microsoft, and again, can share this name because they've talked about it publicly. Microsoft worked with a student on a micro-internship. It was the first one the student Rachel was working on. She did an amazing job. Microsoft literally offered her a summer internship when the project was done, and then a full-time offer.
Wow.
Great. It's wonderful. It's actually not the best case, though. The best case we think for the student is actually to work on multiple micro-internships throughout their entire 4-ish year college experience. Because that way, back to the comment before, that way they can really do much more career exploration.
Yeah.
They can start to dig into what industry I like, what type of role. And by the time they get to that summer internship, they're doing so eyes wide open. And then certainly by the time they get to the full-time role.
So when they're doing these internships and they're given these projects, are they, or micro internships, I want to make sure that I'm very clear.
Okay.
When they're doing this work, are they actually communicating with someone who is guiding them and potentially mentoring them, or are they pretty much doing this in, a way where they're so far apart it really doesn't matter who they're working with?
There's different components to that question. So first of all, they are not getting guidance per se. They are not being managed by the client company. And that's very important. So they're not getting managed. The client company expects that the student can go and do this project on his or her own. And again, it's scoped in such a way that that's possible. Now, the student can interact and engage with the client company or the manager, for lack of a better term, at the client company as much or as little as they both decide. So if I'm doing a project for you, I can say, hey, Harlan, do you want to see an outline before I start writing this document? Or before I put this together, do you want to hop on a quick call to make sure we're on the same page? So those types of interactions take place. What we also see happening quite often is a mentor relationship will form, where a student works on the project, and then as I continue through my experience in university, I may reach out to you and say, hey, Harlan, I'd love to pick your brain and get some advice. But it becomes very, very authentic. The other thing we see, and I think it's important right now, is a lot of students are forming mentor-mentee relationships with alumni from their school. So we had this happen with an Indiana student. An Indiana student was working on a project for a large education company. They reached out to me for advice. I don't think they realized I was CEO of Parker Dewey. They just sort of saw me as someone who had some experience in education. They were asking to pick my brain on the virtual charter space because I used to be on the board of a virtual charter company. Like, that is really cool to start to build that relationship as opposed to just talking about how good or bad the basketball team's going to be this year.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love that they can have that deeper, more meaningful relationship and build something beyond just getting paid. And I think that's really where you offer this really tremendous value. So if a student signs up, they're able to then just scroll through. Like if they're scrolling through today, do you know roughly how many opportunities there are and that they're going to be able to browse?
I know exactly how many. No, it's what the student will see on any given day is somewhere between 30 and 50 opportunities. Now, that's what the student sees. What they don't realize necessarily is a whole bunch of those opportunities are actually looking to select multiple students. Okay. So there may be an opportunity that a student sees for, we want you to write a paper on blank topic or write a blog article on a given topic. The company may be picking 10 or 20 or 30 different students to work on it, giving each one a slightly different spin on that topic. Or we need help researching prospects. So they may pick 50 students and assign each one a different state to go read. So there's a lot more of those opportunities than may seem apparent to the student. The other thing we found is because the projects are so short term, they go up and down incredibly quickly. That you may log in today and see 20 projects or 30 projects, log in next week, you may still see 20 or 30, but they're all going to be different. Right. And in between last week and this week, maybe 200 or 300 kicked off. So you're constantly checking every day. It just becomes part of your routine.
you then share that you want to be part of this, and then hopefully you'll hear back within, what do you hear back within 24, 48 hours?
Depends on the company. Some pick very quick, some are a little slow. We have a client success team that reaches out to the companies to try to nudge them to pick faster. But again, a lot of times the company will pick same day, next day. And to your point, one of the pieces of advice we give to the students is to get in the rhythm, get in the process. Every day at lunchtime, I'm going to check in and see what new projects came up. It takes like 3 minutes to apply to each one. It's relatively quick, but again, we still want the student to have some skin in the game.
So whether you're a freshman or you are a senior or a recent grad in college, you can apply, you can sign up. Are high school students, high school seniors who are going to college, is this something that they can participate in?
We don't think so. We suggest students wait until at least second semester freshman year of college. Now, we've seen some first semester freshmen who have done great. Our suggestion is just when you're adjusting to college, there's enough other stuff to deal with. Focus on that adjustment, but it is 100% up to you as a career launcher. Right. The only rule is you have to be over 18, and that's again just tied to contract law. Okay,
so it sounds like a really awesome opportunity. It's amazing that you've put this together. How many years have you been doing this, man?
Just about 5 years.
That's nuts. Because I remember.
You remember it was just an idea.
I remember that, and it's been a lot of. What's been the hardest part for you, man? Like, what's been the most painful part of building this company?
Yeah, I had no idea. I have just such a level of respect and appreciation for all of the entrepreneurs and company founders I've worked with over the years. Like, no idea what it's like to actually start something from the ground up. I'd say it's the daily roller coaster. Yeah. Every day is a literal roller coaster ride where there's just great news, great articles, something happens and you're feeling really good, you're feeling pumped up, and then you get a note from someone like, yeah, I don't think I having this issue on the and then you just get pulled down. Mm-hmm. And it's just every day is that roller coaster as the founder because you feel so much personal responsibility. In my case, it's for our team, so all of our employees, but I also feel it for these students, especially those impacted by COVID. Like, our team's working 24/7 to create these opportunities for students and doing everything we can because so many of them have been impacted. And it's hard. But then you get a note from someone talking about how you changed my life, or you helped me get a job, or you helped me get an internship when mine was canceled. Like, that's really cool.
Yeah. When it comes to being legitimate, I know that legitimate is such a ridiculous way to categorize what you do or your business, but just this week, being featured in the New York Times, consistently people referring to Parker Dewey as an innovator and someone who's really, I would say, the term micro-internship may even be a term that you've coined. Can I give you credit for that? Would you say that's true?
I think it's true. We were trying to figure out what the hell to call these things 5 years ago and sort of came up with that term.
Yeah. So being in this place, do you feel like you guys have arrived? Do you feel like people now recognize what you do and it's becoming easier to do what you do? Have you gotten to that point, or did you get to that point a couple years ago?
No, it's an interesting question because there have been several points over the journey where I felt like we got there. Where I felt like, okay, people get it now. They understand it. This time feels a little different. This time really feels like, and I think it's unfortunate it's because of a global pandemic, but it feels like the university recruiters at the companies, like those have always been the most difficult nut to crack. How do you help a university recruiter that's used to going to campus, used to doing career fairs, used to hosting info sessions with chicken skewers and frisbees, as we joke? Like, how do you get them to think differently and do something different when what they have is sort of working? Now, it might not be perfect. Their diversity numbers might not be achieving what they want. Their cost per hire is high. They're seeing 55% attrition rate with their new hires. They're not converting as like. It's not going perfectly, but driving change is really hard. What we're seeing now is because of, to my earlier comment, because people just are nervous they're not going to be on campus this fall. Even if the students are, they have to do something different. And all
Yeah.
of a sudden, these university recruiters are using that to say, okay, let's look at this micro internship thing. Wow, it does make sense. And that's been really, really interesting to see.
Yeah.
And then
I
to your
mean,
point about legitimacy, I mean, what's been most refreshing about a lot of these articles, I mean, the folks from the New York Times, who I think we both know,
yeah.
Lisa, made the comment that they're talking about it in a way that's inspirational as opposed to doom and gloom. And I think that's important. We're giving students a pathway. Students have had a tough situation this year. They weren't able to finish up the semester on campus, so they're taking classes from home.
Yeah.
Millions of them have had internships canceled or scaled back. We're giving them an inspirational way of addressing that and making things better. And that's been really, really cool.
Yeah, it's wonderful that there's another opportunity, and I hope that students explore it. And if a parent wants to explore it, how would they be able to be able to kind of look through it and explore it? Does their kid have to be the one to do it?
No, it's funny. We're working with a ton of parents. And in fact, a number of colleges are proactively reaching out to parents of current students to ask them to offer micro internships for students at that school, or reaching out to alumni.
Yeah.
So we're seeing great opportunities to engage the parents, to provide opportunities to students in the same way for the students themselves to get opportunities with others.
Yeah. Well, I hope that people check it out. We're going to include
Thanks,
the
man.
links, and I'm going to make sure that we include a lot of the different aspects you mentioned where people can actually see what you're talking about as well, and investigate that and just find another way to make some money, build relationships, and more importantly, explore what they want. So I'm really grateful to have you here, and I'm excited to continue to hear what you do and the opportunities that you offer. Before I close this out, are there any positions available? I know you're expanding rapidly. If there are any grads who are looking for employment, do you have any opportunities, man?
We're hiring. We're hiring folks on the business development side. As I said, we're trying to talk with as many companies as possible and help them understand how easy it is to offer these micro internships. So yeah, we're looking. So many companies are looking. And again, my message to college students or recent grads, don't let this discourage you. I know things are really, really tough for so many. There are opportunities. There are companies looking. The fact that companies are talking with us right now about their fall recruiting strategies should make us all feel positive about the opportunities out there and the ones that will be. And then if there's ways I could be of help, always reach out. We have a ton of resources, and we're happy to be supportive however we can.
Yeah. Well, knowing that you're in my corner and that you're in so many other people's corner really creates some hope and light in a time where people are struggling, and I hope that they'll check that out. So I'm so grateful to have you here. This has been Jeffrey Moss, CEO founder of Parker Dewey. They are the innovators and creators of Micro Internships, a whole new way to get a feel of what it's like to partner with companies and explore your interests. So thanks, Jeffrey, for being here. And thanks, everybody, for watching live. I appreciate it. And we'll look forward to hosting more incredible, dynamic, interesting, charismatic, fascinating people like Jeffrey on Before College TV. Yes, full heads of hair.
No, and thanks for everything you're doing, Harlan. I mean, your work to help the students onboard at college and have a great experience is just incredible. So,
you know what? Forget it. It's all about you, man. I appreciate it. So thanks again.
Thanks for the opportunity.